Welcome back to another edition of Check Call. Don't forget to subscribe to Check Call, the newsletter on FreightWaves.com if you haven't already. Today we welcome Jesse Buckingham, founder of Vuma. Welcome to the show, Jesse.
Thank you so much, Mary. Good to be here.
Today we are kind of continuing a common theme that we've had on the show lately, and that is really how we can implement AI and really kind of transform freight technology and a tech stack, but in a very reasonable and manageable way. We're not trying to come in and say, spend $700 million on AI and technology. Although if you were interested in spending $700 million, I know a few companies that would love to take a trek. That being said, before we get too far into that discussion, let's get some background on you, Jesse, and why you started Vuma.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so I've been in the logistics ecosystem for a little while. Before starting Vuma, I was the CEO of a group of logistics technology businesses. So we had two TMS platforms for final mile logistics, a fleet inspection platform, and then led the acquisition of trucker tools in the digital freight matching and visibility space. And so I've always loved logistics. I think a lot of people kind of fell into it and then fell in love with it. Especially the truckload side of it. I think just this raw kind of entrepreneurial energy in the space has always been exciting to me, where you look around and so many of the great success stories are just kind of salt of the earth characters that had a lot of grit and perseverance and a sales orientation, were able to build something big. And it's just this core kind of economic pillar. And so it was a space that I was really excited to build for and be in. And we started Vuma initially partly kind of born of there's a few things. I mean, anyone who's worked in brokerage or transportation knows that it takes a lot to actually get stuff from point A to point B reliably at scale. And it's been pretty hard traditionally to often put tools in place that kind of move the needle on a lot of the things that operators in logistics are doing every day, right? Making consistent check calls to make sure that trucks are picking up and delivering on time, or answering the phones to figure out if you can work with a carrier and book them on a load, or maybe it's building loads in the TMS or scheduling appointments. All of this stuff, super critical work to being able to actually execute freight, but just takes a ton of time and sweat, and is very taxing, and honestly is not the thing that most people who got into logistics kind of fell in love with, right? It was usually around the problem solving and the building relationships with shippers and the solving all of the stuff that happens when a truck breaks down, and there's a factory that's kind of relying on that shipment, and you've got to think on your feet to get something working. But it's not the building of loads in the TMS. And so we really started Vuma as a way to try to build AI workers and workflow tools that could take a lot of that work off people's plates, so that they could do more meaningful work, do the stuff that they love, and be able to focus on the stuff that kind of moves the needle for the business. And it's been an exciting few years, and the platform has grown and evolved. But that was essentially the origin of it. I teamed up with my co-founder, who came from self-driving trucks. So he was a founding and engineer at Kodiak Robotics. His name's Mike Carter. And so a different sort of angle to logistics, where he was focused on automating the driving of the trucks, and we've sort of come together to try to build workers that can sit alongside the operators today to help to automate some of the tedious tasks that goes in moving freight.
I mean, I personally got into logistics to copy and paste appointment times and change them.
I thought that was what most of us got bachelor's degrees at college, to kind of be able to shuttle data around, right?
Yeah, that was my first job in logistics, was copying and pasting and changing appointment times. Gotta say, could never be happier to see something get automated, because having to do that all day, every day, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't exactly as the what I assume the youths say, spark joy. Nobody really loves that. That's your whole job. But you're right. People do get into it for the problem solving. Because because I've never met a person that has come from operations or anywhere in logistics that hasn't said, oh yeah, like if you give me a, I've never seen this before, like that's a good day at work. I mean, not really, but like it's like a rewarding day of like I actually get to solve these problems.
Yeah, I mean that's what I often ask. Like, I spend a lot of time on brokerage floors, and I always love asking the reps, like, "Hey, what do what do you love most about your work?" And it's usually that it's like every day is different, right? There's some sort of new problem that they're like figuring out or solving. Some of them will say that it's like, "Hey, I've been working with this shipper for like 2 years, and I kind of really know them, and like I love kind of helping like move their freight for them, and they build a relationship over time." But yeah, it's usually not the like clicking around and pasting data from one screen to another.
Yeah, I gotta say that's probably the least exciting one. But that being said, so, one of the phrases that I have really, first of all, I've always had, but it's really kind of become more prevalent and easier applied is automate what you hate. And I think that with the introduction of AI, that's really lending itself nicely to that. And so automate what you hate could literally just be like, hey, I don't want to sit here and email 20 carriers asking when are you going to deliver, when I could literally schedule a report every morning to send a text out to somebody. And then all I have to do is manage the exceptions. And so I think that because those exceptions, right, those are the ones that people want to work on. Those are the ones that are outside the normal. Those are the ones that are the problem childs or the ones going, this is going to be a fun one today. That turns into some fire for you to have to put out. Those are the more exciting ones. You don't want to just be like, oh, cool, this load's still going to deliver at 8 a.m. Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, let me log that in the TMS and like move on to the next phone call.
Exactly. And that's where I think, this is where some of these solutions really kind of come in and lend themselves nicely. But so when you said that you were going around and talking to brokers and asking them what they like about their jobs, things, obviously, I'm assuming you asked them what they did not like as well. What were some of those common frustrations or things that people had that you made you kind of go, okay, I'm seeing an underlying current here. I'm seeing an underlying problem. Maybe we should start addressing this.
Yeah, I mean, you work in logistics, you know that really all across the workflow, there's been examples of a lot of these tasks, whether or not like it's a quote coming in and you've got to go look up on DAT, on maybe on Truckstop, look on your TMS, like, you're looking at data in 5 different sources. And then, like that whole process kind of is not fun. But a lot of like for us, it was about kind of finding the entry point, like what problem do we tackle first? And we 2.5, almost 3 years ago now, started with load building automation, because this was something that pretty much universally everyone was spending a lot of time on, but it was really mentally taxing work. Because when you think about like building a shipment, you need, it's like 30 data points that need to be 100% correct, right? Before you go out and schedule those appointments and actually put that load out on and try to cover it. And it's very like mentally taxing, because you're sort of like checking every single field and making sure that it's right. And I remember like chatting with an executive at a top brokerage saying that, like, building loads sucks, and it's like one of these classic jobs where they've got a lot of folks with like college educated degrees that are, looking at PDFs or combing through emails to kind of put shipments into the TMS. And so it was a really like great entry point for this. Whereas this like painful problem, we started there, solved that really well, and then from there expanded out into other parts of the workflow, into quoting, then scheduling downstream, and now we're helping to sort of cover loads and track freight as well. But it was really like finding that entry point where we could build like really like an awesome system, and then trusting that you like build a relationship with folks over time and earn the right to be able to help solve like more problems.
I think that's the one of the best use cases I've seen for AI is that, and kind of the automation movement, if you will, is that it's it's really freeing up that brain power, that the necessity for those problems. Because obviously, if you have the perfect, in a perfect world, you would have something come in from your shipper, flow perfectly into your TMS, and then flow perfectly to a carrier. You wouldn't even have to touch anything. You wouldn't have to do anything. It would just get delivered. You would get the paperwork. They would get paid, signed, sealed, delivered. However, I've never gone a day where that has happened on every single load that I've ever had. And that the paperwork, the invoice was billed 100% correctly, and all the accessorials were correct. There was nothing added. The fuel schedule was right. Like, come on. So that being said, that's where you want to put your extra brain power, your extra people, your extra capital is on those, not sitting there going, oh, well, here's this shipment that we run every single day, and somebody who entered it flip-flopped, instead of like 0001, they made it 0021 or 10. And it was just like a simple mistake. And those, I think, are some of the solutions that, in my opinion, are easier to automate. Of like, oh, you see this come through, okay, it's just a number flip flop. Human error as to why we're still typing in manual information for a load. Great question. Don't know why we would do that, but it's a different story for a different day. So I think that that's one of the perfect use cases for these types of applications and these AI automations, because it's actually like a solution, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, and there's others as well. Like we do a lot of work now on the carrier side of the business as well, where folks will be posting loads onto the load board, and their phones just blow up, and they may be missing like 40% of those phone calls, and then the ones that are getting through, a lot of them pick it up, ask for the MC, sorry, I can't work with you. Meanwhile, there's somebody else that's kind of sitting on hold or has dropped off that you like could have worked with or would have been a good fit. And we've got folks that they're staring down the barrel of like bringing on another shipper, and they're like fired up, but then they're asking this question of like, be underwater here, right? How are we actually going to be able to like service this? And if we actually do want to try to cover this much, it's like, how are we going to, do we really have the team in place, the operational support to be able to handle the volume? And so that's like another area where we see it very, very similarly, right? Is like, how do you give people these sort of extensions that can do a lot of the blocking and tackling, so they can continue to kind of handle more and more, and you can actually like deal with the growth that most brokers are looking for.
So when it comes to something that we like, when it comes to that perfect world, right? That world of, hey, we want to have it where realistically we're only touching 1% of the loads that we're doing a day, right? How realistic do you think that future is? Do you think that's like maybe something that could happen in 20 years, in 5 years? Because like we said, in my opinion, there's never going to be a world where every single load is going to go perfectly. Because look, warehouses love to put the wrong shipment on the wrong truck, and then and everybody loves to realize it 250 miles in.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we're a long way from that, and I think it's just going to be a game of trying to increase the share of stuff that can be handled seamlessly. And I think it will be this sort of journey, right, where a lot of it depends on being able to make sure that the system can, whatever it is, like, can learn and understand a lot of the nuance that goes into it, so that you can kind of start to reduce what is an exception and actually have your systems like handle more and more of those edge cases. And so I sort of think of it as like building up a memory, right? And like turning that into, we call it like kind of like collective intelligence. But that's what a lot of it depends on, because that's kind of like what makes transportation challenging to actually automate, is there's just so many of these little nuanced exceptions. And so a lot of it, yeah, does kind of depend on actually building up that knowledge over time. And so that's kind of a lot of what we think about, is how do you actually build systems so that the reps are like training these AI workers in the same way that you might train a new employee, but so they start to like embed more and more of that like knowledge over time.
1,000%. That's one of this seems like one of those one of those better every day, like incremental improvement, where at the beginning it might only be, okay, I'm I'm managing 40% of the loads, or and then like over the years you can get that number down, which is fantastic because obviously, that makes you refine your SOPs, refine your practices, and then really identify efficiencies that you can implement across all customers. So for example, if you have customer A and you've got them down to maybe 90%, but this other customer over here that handles the same type of commodity or the same type of material, in theory, you should be able to adopt some practices from there. And it's just a matter of kind of, now that you have this time freed up, you have someone that can sit there and take a step back and say, okay, well, this is what's working for this organ, this shipper. What's going to work for this one over here? Is it the same? Is it not? Let's try it and see what happens. What does this look like? It allows you to have more time to kind of more or less be proactive instead of just very reactionary of like, well, which large fire am I putting out today?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, you're picking up on something that I think is really powerful, and like we're moving into a future where today, when you have insights about how to do something well, it's in most businesses today, most logistics companies as well, like those insights aren't always like surfaced across the business very well. You might have like a really stellar employee that gets really good and then they get promoted, and like a lot of their knowledge about how to do it, some of it's, transfer, but a lot of it's kind of lost, or maybe they have some insight about how to serve a customer better, and like, but it's just not well kind of like propagated across the business. One of the cool things about the like systems that are getting built now is that those learnings, you can kind of like instantly realize the benefit of them across the organization, and that process can like compound much faster, and then you don't have this scenario where somebody does a great job and they kind of move onto a role and you lose a lot of that. So you start to like have this sort of compounding learning effect that I think is going to become like more and more powerful over the time. And it's like one of the things that I'm really excited about with like what we're doing and others is the like acceleration that you get as all of those learnings start to like improve the system more and more.
I'm particularly looking forward to like kind of like you mentioned that compound learning, because there's times where I've worked in an organization that I've had to go over to like a counterpart that worked on a different team and say, okay, this is the area I'm looking to cover. Like, who do you usually use? Okay, well, I want to use this carrier, but they said they have to talk to you first. And so there was literally a situation that we solved just by like the two of us and a carrier talking on the phone to say, okay, this is how we're going to get you here. This is how we're going to get you here. This is how this is going to work. So that way, one, that carrier is always moving. There was like hardly any empty miles. And two, our stuff was getting covered at a better rate because we had just locked that carrier into essentially a continuous move. But then also, like, if either one of us left or someone else filled in that day, like nobody knew or nobody thought to do that. It was only because I would call the carrier and say, hey, can you haul this for me? I'm like, well, I don't know. I have to talk to so and so to see if he has something for me. And I'm like, okay, I sit next to so and so. I'll figure this out right quick. But then also, like, that being said, if you're not in an office together, because as we know, there's a lot of large brokerages that have offices all over the country, all over the world. And it's easier to say, okay, well, if we have all this system held in the stuff held in one repository, essentially, like, your office in Little Rock, Arkansas can have access to the same carriers and the same notes that Seattle or New England does. And I think that that's only going to help an organization be stronger and service their customers better because they have all of that institutional knowledge over time, trained and kind of at their fingertips.
I think that's right. And um, it's becoming one of the things that's kind of powerful and different, I think, now is that before people would record those, you'd have like maybe a carrier profile or something in your TMS and you would kind of write down some notes, but like that data was, even if it was recorded, was kind of lost because it wasn't really available to any system or anything. But now you're kind of in a world where like much fuzzier anecdotes, right, or things can actually be used to like guide the AI, and so it's a real sort of unlock in terms of the data that is now available to be able to support those systems. Because something like that, right, you could, maybe you write that down as a note in the TMS, or maybe the AI just kind of like is learning and understanding about somebody's preferences and knows to like go and access that anytime it's going and interacting with the carrier. It's like super novel. That's a really interesting use case.
I personally love it because that way it also reduces your sticky notes that you have of, I have this carrier, and if I send them to this location, if this driver goes, he can't go to that location because he and the dock worker got in a fight last week and they said really mean things to each other. So I can give it to this carrier, but that driver can't go there. And so that's, I think, a really good use case of AI, of basically everything that's your post-it notes or your sticky notes on your desk, kind of help it do it so that way you're not going to set someone up to get in a fight that day. You're not going to, just those weird things that happen, that you write a sticky note down and you double check it. I think that over time, like you said, it's, you lose that information over time. So I think keeping that around and having some way, so that way in a year, if that driver is still working for that carrier, we don't send them to that warehouse where they're going to get in a fight with the same dock worker, or that the legend of the two got in a fight carried on, and now nobody will deal with them. Like, it's just the little things like that, which I know is such a minute case and such a weird thing, but there's something like that across the industry that it's just easier to kind of deal with. But that being said, before I go down too many tangents of weird transportation stories from days past, if you were to sit down with a leader in the organization that wants to bring their teams along on this automation, on this AI journey, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. For some operators, there is some fear around AI sometimes. Every team is a little bit different. Some folks sort of really see it as like an exciting opportunity to evolve their skill sets for a future that they see coming. Others feel like there's a little bit of like, hey, what does this mean? Are we going to need less people? So I think that there's an element around like messaging that is really important, where I think it's like communicating to teams that like it is really important to like grow and evolve as in a business, and that the future that we're kind of moving into demands that all of us kind of learn how to use the latest tooling, but also to like involve people in that and provide them with support and training in like how to become better at using these tools so that they become a more valuable contributor. That ends up being really important. I think also like involving them in the process. Some of our best implementations are ones where the business like is very clear about their objectives, but they also have cultivated a lot of buy-in because they've one created a culture where people are kind of excited about. So a lot of this starts even sort of before you like go and try to think about implementing. It's actually about sort of embedding this culture of excitement for change and this like restlessness that like we're never done and that we always could be better, both in terms of process and how we serve customers and how we use tools. But then when you actually go to implement, like really involving folks, and then it's about like finding your champions. A lot of this is like there's sort of the first sales process where you like choose a vendor, but then there's like the second one, which is like bringing things into your organization, and putting runs on the board and like showing people internally the like case studies of what success looks like and that what that means for people and how their job is improved or how it's enabled them to earn more money or how it's enabled them to just generally like do more meaningful work, celebrating those things and kind of expanding on them. And then I think it's also about like understanding that implementing tooling is a process and it's sort of like a muscle that you actually and a skill in and of itself. And so I think it's like building that culture of like understanding kind of what it takes to get stuff and being able to like persevere and move through that kind of implementation and early adoption period. So a lot of pieces to it, but those are some of the learnings that I think like we've had over the years.
I think so much of it comes down to that change management part of things, of, saying, of really getting people involved instead of just saying, well, we're doing this, you better get on board. because that's not necessarily what anyone wants to hear when they're like, upending the way that you work. It's not just get on board. It's more of like, okay, well, let's start with things everybody hates and let's try to work on those. And it's easier if you build those small wins, or seemingly small wins, to then upgrade into bigger, better changes. That being said, we are running out of time today. So, Jesse, there's a question that everybody has come on the show has to answer, and you're no exception. If you could build a house out of any food, what would you choose?
This is a very challenging question. I don't think there is a right answer to this, but I'm going to go with cinnamon sticks. And the reason is that I think I am prioritizing structural integrity with my home. Like if it was something really delicious that I actually wanted to eat, I would just be like fearful and worry about my health. But I do want some kind of like light background aroma. And so I'm kind of getting like nice scents. It's going to, I think it would be like an inviting place to be in with high levels of structural integrity.
I like that. That's a first. We haven't really gone down the spice rabbit hole yet. But I like it because, like you said, the sticks are pretty sturdy. And I mean, honestly, you're fall 24/7.
Yeah, exactly. It's like pumpkin spice latte kind of vibes all year round.
I absolutely love that though. Cinnamon. That's first. I like it. So if anyone has any floor plans for a cinnamon house, or if they have any questions about what we've talked about today, where can they find you outside the show?
Yeah, you can follow me on LinkedIn at Jesse Buckingham or vooma.com, vooma.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Mary. Great to be here.
You can find Check All the Podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcast and Spotify. Don't forget to check out all the other incredible FreightWaves shows, and don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/checkcall. See you on the internet.